3 brand new thrillers hitting streaming services the exact same day. Hulu has Deep Water, Amazon Prime has Master, and Netflix has Windfall. Let's talk about them. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to spoiler-free reviews for 3 brand new thrillers that hit streaming services on the exact same day for whatever reason. Deep Water, starring Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas from Knives Out. That's over on Hulu. You've got on Amazon Prime a movie called Master, starring Regina Hall. And then Windfall over on Netflix, featuring Jason Segel, Jesse Plemons, and Lily Collins. We're going to talk about all of them here in just a sec. But first, I do want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. I review a ton of movies and TV shows on this channel. So if you want to subscribe down below, would love to have you aboard. So please consider doing that, and maybe even hit that little notification bell, let you know about all my new videos dropping. So let's dive right into these movies. So they are all thrillers, but they're not quite the same in tone. They're not all necessarily straight ahead thrillers. Master is certainly more of a horror, supernatural type thriller. Windfall is a more, claustrophobic type thriller, and a little bit of comedy thrown in there. And then Deep Water is an erotic thriller. And I'm not exactly sure what is going on, that mid-March seems to be sort of the dropping point for all of these, because not only are these 3 out, but you do have 2 brand new horror movies in theaters, X and Uma. So I don't know why mid-March seemed to be the spot to do that. I have not seen the theatrical films yet, so we're just going to talk today about the 3 streamers. But yeah, very, very bizarre. So all of these movies, I will say, have some interesting final act choices that I'm not sure necessarily work for any of them. So they have that in common too. But let's talk first about Deep Water. I'm just going to do these sort of in the order that I watched them, which is going to be Deep Water first. So like I said, this is an erotic thriller, and it's directed by Adrian Lin, who I was not familiar with, but he has made a name for himself with these sort of things. He did Fatal Attraction. He did Indecent Proposal, 9.5 Weeks. So he's done a lot in that sort of erotic thriller genre. And like I mentioned up top, Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas from Knives Out are starring in this, along with some other people you may recognize: Lil Rel Howery, Tracy Letts, Finn Wittrock. And essentially, these 2 are having a lot of marital issues. They play Vic and Melinda Van Allen, and they have a young daughter, but their marriage is, kind of falling apart. And, instead of divorcing, they've decided, well, at least Melinda has decided to be a bit open with the marriage. And, Vic does not really take to that. So he jokes at a party that he murdered her previous boyfriend, because, he went missing. And obviously certain people at the party don't necessarily take that as a joke and start, sort of casting shade in his direction, especially when one of Melinda's current boyfriends ends up dead. So this movie is kind of crazy. Like, I wanted to like it, and I really like Ben Affleck, and it's funny, I've seen him twice now in this past week, because I just watched The Last Duel, so I will have a review up pretty soon about that as I'm going through sort of the remainder of my 2021 movies. And his character in that is sort of like the comic relief guy through all of it, and here he's definitely trying to play it straight, but it comes off a bit comedic at times, because some of the things in this movie are so outlandish and so ridiculous. Now, look, I am a fan of this kind of erotic thriller type thing. I just rewatched with my buddy Joe to review them for the anniversary, Single White Female and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. And they're both sort of in that erotic thriller genre. Certainly Single White Female is. And I can get behind it, because they're all kind of like corny, a little bit cheesy. Fatal Attraction, I think, is probably the best one in my memory that's ever been made. I mean that's such sort of a touchstone for that genre that it worked very very well. Of course, great acting as well. Glenn Close, Michael Douglas, and here Ben Affleck. He is one of my favorites. I love him in so many different movies. He's just the script is so insane in this movie that it's hard to sort of keep a straight face. There's a few like threads that go nowhere. Like he collects snails and sort of cultivates them, but the metaphor was lost on me. I didn't quite understand what they were going for there, and they never did anything with it. And in the last third, it just like all three of these movies, like I said, all three of these have third act problems for sure. And this one certainly goes wildly off the rails in the third act. And I don't know, these characters make decisions that even in the context of their world don't really make sense. I did not like the ending of this movie. I sort of hate where they left it. And, if you want to talk some of the best of the genre, like a Fatal Attraction, Ben Affleck already is in one with Gone Girl. That is, I don't know if that's necessarily seen as an erotic thriller, but it's certainly in the same kind of vibe as this movie. And obviously that's way, way, way better. So, look, this is kind of enjoyable to watch because it's such a mess. And I think there is sort of an art to this genre of the erotic thriller where if you play it like too safe and too straight, it comes off as sort of comical anyway. So you do sort of need to lean in a little bit to the silliness of it all. And I'm not positive that this movie ever does. But I can't say I disliked watching it because it is in that sort of zany vein, even if it's not entirely on purpose. So it's not a positive grade, but I leave Deep Water with a C minus. Let's go next to Master. This is starring Regina Hall, who will soon be one of the hosts of the Oscars. And basically, she plays Gail Bishop, who is the first ever Black master, headmaster of this university called Ancaster in New England, sort of in that like Harvard, Yale sort of vein. The students at the school happen to believe that there is a ghost haunting it and that it is cursed by this woman who was accused of witchcraft hundreds of years ago. And, she has killed several times over and whatever. So this movie is the only one of the three, by the way, on Rotten Tomatoes that is positive with both critics and audiences. Both of the other two movies, Deepwater, and we're going to talk soon about Windfall, are negative in critics and negative in audience. This is the only one positive in both. I would say it's probably the most well-made of the three. But here are my issues with this movie. Number one, again, the final act is... It just goes wildly off the rails, and like all these. Well, Windfall actually has the best final third, but we'll get to that. But there's a supernatural element to this with the whole ghost thing, and we see a lot of sort of creepy imagery and stuff in this. But I'm not even positive that it needed to go there, because this is a very, very Jordan Peele-esque type of thriller / horror film. This is the most horror of all three of these movies for sure. Not only with the supernatural element, but like the Jordan Peele movies, it has a huge sort of, racism bent and race relations sort of theme. White privilege, is very prevalent in this movie. And so we see a lot of that here. And I think what effectively makes those Jordan Peele movies work so well is that he doesn't go too far into something that, yes, okay, granted, maybe some of the stuff, without giving spoilers, some of the stuff certainly could not happen in these movies, but it's sort of the idea of, man being the greatest villain and, the biggest horror that there is. And that's sort of where this movie stumbles, is in that supernatural element. It's fine. It's definitely creepy. It gave me some chills. It had some very, vivid imagery that was creepy for sure. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it was trying to do sort of both, and they didn't mesh very well. If they had stuck with sort of that racism angle and, people are the worst kind of thing, I feel like it might have been more effective in that regard. But that being said, this is probably the best of like the Jordan Peele knockoffs that I've seen. Like you had Antebellum, which was just horrible. You had that TV show. I think it was on Prime as well, which is interesting because this is on Prime. But this show called Them, which was clearly like trying to copy the movie Us from Jordan Peele, like that didn't work at all. This does at least work very well in that particular lane. But adding all the supernatural stuff into it, I think did it a little bit of a detriment because it was sort of at odds with itself in that regard. Now, that being said, Regina Hall, I usually associate with comedy. You know, like I just said, she's going to be hosting the Oscars, obviously for her more comedic chops, and we see her in a lot of funny movies. But she is definitely not funny here. She is really, really sort of shedding that image, and I believed this character 100%. Very dramatic. The horror stuff, her screaming was good. So I think she, if of anything else, sort of holds this movie together, because I do think kind of the script and the directing is all kind of a bit at odds with itself. But yeah, Regina Hall, great in this role. And for me, the best of the three films, I'm going to leave Master with a B. You know, luckily they don't lean too heavily into the supernatural. That's the thing. Like, it doesn't even come up for a good 45 minutes of the movie. So you can sort of, you know, embrace the characters and embrace, you know, the other themes that they're going for before that. I teetered on a B minus, but you know what? I think it does a lot of things well too. So, all right. Windfall is our last movie that is on Netflix. Jason Segel, speaking of the Oscars, Academy Award nominee this year, Jesse Plemons, and then Lily Collins. And really, there's only one other person in this movie. It's a 4-person cast. Very, very small. And I'm not sure if maybe that had something to do with, you know, filming during COVID times and trying to keep this very, very lean and mean. The other person in this movie, let me see if I can get his name, Omar Leyva, and he plays a gardener, but he's only in really a couple of scenes. But in this movie, Jason Segel plays this thief, and none of these people have names, by the way. He's credited as nobody, and then Lily Collins is credited as the wife, and Jesse Plemons is credited as the CEO. So I can't really give you names, but Jesse Plemons plays this wealthy CEO who is going to their vacation home. You know, he's got his wife in tow, and Jason Segel's character is robbing the place and does not expect them to come home, but they do. So they sort of are at a standoff here, and he basically, you know, holds them as hostages. And at one point, you know, he leaves, but he ends up coming back. I won't talk about why. But so the whole movie really takes place, I would say 90 to 95% in and around this house. More than that, 90, 97% probably. So it's got some tense moments for sure. But speaking of odd tones, this is, you know, listed as an American thriller film, directed by Charlie McDowell. But what it doesn't say at all, now that's just from the Wikipedia thing, but what it doesn't say is that it is going for comedy in a few moments of this, and I'm not positive that it really was necessary or, you know, kept us in the moment. Now, I know for me, if I was in this situation, yes, I'd probably be cracking wise a little bit, and you know, I've been in sort of dire situations where, yeah, my sort of wise ass nature comes out. But I don't know, for this screenplay, for this movie, it just didn't seem to quite fit. Like, Jesse Plemons is kind of like riffing and like doing a couple of snide remarks here and there. You know, like it was Jason Bateman or something, you know, in one of his sort of comedy movies, or Ryan Reynolds, you know, sort of that snide little repartee. And it didn't quite work for me in that regard. But I do think these characters are interesting, and I think they talk about some interesting things while they're in the moment, because they realize that they're going to be stuck there, you know, for a day or two, and obviously nobody really wants to go to sleep because, you know, there's a robber in the house, and he doesn't want to go to sleep because then they'll just, you know, leave, or they'll kill him or call the cops on him, or whatever. And so everybody sort of breaks into, okay, well, like, what can we talk about? Let's get to know each other. Let's figure out the cracks in this marriage. Let's figure out the cracks in your life, Jason Segel, that led you to this, you know. And so there's a lot of interesting dialogue portions of this movie. I would say of the three, even though this is listed as a thriller, I almost think it's more of a drama. This is certainly the one of the three that is the least a thriller. I would almost classify this as a drama, maybe some tinges of comedy, but thriller, I'm not so sure. There's a few moments where stuff starts to go down, and okay, maybe you could call that thriller-esque. But I think this is more of a character study, more of a drama film with some pretty solid performances. But again, kind of like The Master, it just sort of um, goes off the rails a little bit in the third act, like all the movies. But this one specifically sort of at odds with itself, with its tone. It's a little bit inconsistent, threw me off a little bit, but I did enjoy watching this. In fact, I enjoyed watching all three of the movies. Deep Water is not a good movie, but I did enjoy it. This one ranks for me just a little bit under Master, but still pretty solid. I'm going to leave Windfall with a B minus. So there you go. I don't know when I'll get around to seeing X and Uma. They're in theaters exclusively right now, so I may have to wait until they're on demand to review them for you. But for whatever reason, mid-March, that is the new thriller and horror time of year, I guess. So there you go. And thanks for watching. We'll see everybody next time. Bye.